that we have outlined. Notwithstanding 2 years of COVID-19, this government has done all what it could do. The President gave an honest, balanced reflection of where we stand as a nation. The choice we face as the nation in this year's election is to reaffirm what we said we are going to do in 1994, implementation of a national program of transformation that will result to qualitatively changing the lives of the majority of our people who are black in general and women in particular, because they are in the majority. For the better, and not to side with those who benefited from the historical legacy of the privilege, who seek to block the transformation at every turn, as they cling to preserve their wealth, their properties, as well as positions at the expense of the majority. Under the ANC, we will continue to take the country forward with all its challenges towards a better future for all. Under a conglomeration of opposition parties, they will entrench wealth amongst the few. Under them, poverty and inequality will grow. I-Moonshot Pact yimbutho yabagxeki abadibene ngokuzama uMzantsi Afrika wocalucalulo usithatha basibuyisele emva. During SONA, nangxola nini? During SONA, the President accounted to the nation. Hlengwa ayifani nawe lonto.
Order, man. Honorable Hlengwa, please, man. Honorable members, please don't drown the speaker.
On Thursday evening, the President accounted to the nation on the implementation not only on SONA 2023 commitments, but also on the 5-year plan, the medium-term strategic framework. To those who say nothing has been done, let me remind you, because you have political dementia. Mandini Kumbuzege, 14 billion Mamelani had been allocated to fight crime and corruption. Over the next 3 years, 4,000 arrests have been made for all those who have damaged critical infrastructure, 70 arrests for construction extortion, and over 3,000 arrests for illegal mining. Over 1.7 million work and livelihood opportunities for unemployed South Africans have been created through the presidential employment stimulus. 45,000 participants have been placed in the National Youth Service, and 51,000 participants have been employed by 28 implementing partners under the Social Employment Fund. Ngubani ke ufuna ukuma apha azoteketa athi kwenziwa nganto? Kukho abakhalayo, kukho abalilayo, kukho abajedayo. Hunali balang, hunali babokolang, batla yemang mona, batla bokolla, betweta besita khange kwenziwe nto. The matters outlined in SONA has clear to say on economy, how do we grow our economy, how do we create jobs, reducing poverty and tackling corruption. We are bound as public representatives of the people to ensure that the program we adopt in our organization are for the people, of the people, with the people, because we work with people and speak to their needs. The ANC's January 8th statement is very clear that we are more determined this year to succeed in building a better life for all and become very resolute about bringing together broad democratic forces in the country. Ingxelo nkcukacha manani census 2022 iyavuma kuba igxathu elikhulu urhulumente ulenzile, kodwa njengoko elenzile imicelimingeni mininzi iyakhula kuba uluntu luyakhula. Iziphumo zona ziyasivuma ukuba eneneni impilo nobomi babantu bakuthi ukusukela mhla usathatha ulawulo yohlukile. Ewe zikhona into esizigqwalisayo. amachaphaza asigqwalisayo njengokuba kwehla komgangatho wenkonzo eziya ebantwini bakowethu ulawulo oluheshe kwezinye izigaba zohulumento siyazazi ezonto and uhulumento onyanisekileyo uyathetha nge-challenges ajongene nazo. Therefore, we do not have to be held at hostage in this debate by political parties that will come with sound bites but lack the evidence. The census 22 is a clear evidence. Ukwenyuka kwamaxabiso kanobomu akhwitsha kwiimpula zikaLjaca ekubeni uqoqosho lungenyuki kodwa siyawabona amaxabiso nempilo yoluntu iyonyuka lwenzakalisa uluntu. Urhulumente ke uyazivelela zonke ezinkalo esisihelegu sikacimicimi wombane yeyona nto iqhorha uqoqosho kunye noluntu lwelizwe lakuthi. Sithi ke urhulumente makawuqonde into yoba noko lo mvambo awunyamezeleki njengokuba siwubonile ngomgqibelo sisiya kwisigaba sesithandathu. Sinethemba ke into yoba xa ke imsima kule ndawo uminister ojongane nalo mba uzawucacisa ncakasana. Kodwa ke naxa kunjalo ithemba lona likhona ukuba ziyalandelelwa ezi zinto. What we need to honestly acknowledge is that corruption has had a devastating impact on the ability of our state-owned enterprises to function for the purposes that they were meant for. We have just had another manager arrested in ESCOM on the allegation of a 1 million, and we know that whenever they get arrested, we get blamed. Who must be blamed when criminals are arrested, and they are arrested through the ANC government? We also want to request our communities that when they see those who are destroying our infrastructure, they must alert police and those people must be brought to book. As the parliament of the people, we take a responsibility in contributing to the health of the state of the nation. The Judicial Commission of Inquiry, known as Zondo Commission, and the report of the president, which were referred to parliament for consideration, have been acted upon. The constant narrative that Parliament has done nothing can only be said by those who consciously gone to sleep, who do not want to see the process of assigned sections of the report given to the committees and how the Ethics Committee have engaged itself and pronounced on some of the findings. The work will continue within the purview of Parliament. As the majority party of the ANC, we lead in this responsibility. And this responsibility of passing the legislation is about transformation of this country. To date, we have passed 88 bills, all expression of the ANC policy that shape the direction of the country and influence decision-making. We have done this whilst we have to mourn 23 ANC MPs who passed on the greatest number compared to any term of parliament. They died with their boots and heels on. May their soul rest in peace. Whilst the ANC is seeking to unite the nation, addressing the national grievances, promoting unity and diversity, and driving social cohesion, we are confronted with acts of racism carried out by groups of whites who cling to an old apartheid flag that is outlawed, swear allegiance to a past that was discriminating and declared as a crime against humanity. That cannot be allowed in our democracy. They desire to undermine constitutional democracy and break down ongoing efforts of nation building and social cohesion. These acts of racism only serve to reopen the wounds of the past and bring about a response. We have been talking about this for almost 30 years.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Sorry, your time is up.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Member. I now call upon the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, fellow South Africans. Mr. President, thank you very much for sharing with us the story of Tinswalo, the child of democracy. There is no doubt that the South Africa that she grew up in after 1994 was a hopeful place. It was built on the South African dream, the promise that her life would be better than the life of her parents, and that her children's lives would be better still. What the President did during his address was to tell us the story of Tinswalo's start in life during the 1990s and 2000s. It was far from perfect, but it was a time of hope and possibility. But Tinswalo's life story does not end after childhood. Today, she is a 30-year-old woman. She has entered the next phase of her life as a wife, a mother, and a provider. Over the past decade, she has watched in growing horror as the dream of her childhood has been betrayed. Tinswalo's social consciousness started to develop during high school as she watched the ANC elevate a man accused of corruption and rape to the highest office in the land. She grew steadily more disillusioned when she found out that 246 million rand of public money was used to build a fire pool and a chicken coop at the President's home in Nkandla, even as many people around her fell deeper and deeper into poverty. And she watched as the ANC members of this House protected him. In 2015, she graduated from a TVET college. A year later, Tinswalo realized that she was not alone in her growing unease about the future. In 2016, she watched as many voters abandoned the ANCs in major cities. And she too started to think about changing her vote at the next election. You see, she just couldn't stomach the idea of voting for the ANC after it had unleashed Jacob Zuma, state capture, and load shedding on her country. But in 2018, her spirits lifted. Tinswalo was delighted when the ANC ejected Zuma from the presidency in February of that year. In fact, Mr. President, in 2019, Tinswalo voted for you. Like many others across the country, she did so for one reason, because she believed that you, Mr. President, would restore South Africa to the path it was on when she was a child. That you would rescue the South African dream. But tragically, her hopes were shattered soon after. In the same year that Mr. Ramaphosa was elected, Tinswalo lost the first and only job she had because the load-shedding crisis that he had promised to end shut down the factory where she worked. She was forced to move into a tin shack on the outskirts of the city, returning to the same life of poverty she thought she had left behind for good. And she has been unemployed ever since. In 2021, Tinswalo joined the growing group of South Africans who simply refused to vote. She was simply too angry after the Ramaphosa administration broke all of the lofty promises it had made in the New Dawn, including by protecting the President's comrades implicated in state capture. And sadly, things went from bad to much, much worse. In 2022, her father became one of the 75 people who are murdered every single day in South Africa. He was killed by a loan shark from whom he was forced to borrow money because the Transnet failure had shut down the transport job he had had since Tinswalo was a baby. For Tinswalo, it felt like her whole world had come crashing down. She'd lost her livelihood, she'd lost her home, and her father. Her South African dream lay in ruins. Yet, amid the darkest hour of her life, light entered when she gave birth to a daughter of her own. Called SONA, she was Tinswalo's greatest gift. This miracle of new life gave her a newfound determination to fight, to rescue her South African dream. You see, Tinswalo is done waiting for the ANC to change. She has accepted that it never, ever will. She acknowledges the opportunities she got as a young person, which her parents never had. But she now thinks about the future of her own family above all else. You see, Mr. President, like millions of other South Africans, Tinswalo cannot afford to live in the past. She must survive in the reality of what South Africa is in 2024, not what it was in 1994. When she is reminded of her hopeful childhood, it fills her with sadness for the childhood that waits SONA. When she remembers how her family moved from a shack into a formal house with running water and electricity when she was a young girl, it hurts and shames her that she has ended up back in a shack with no water and constant power cuts as a grown woman. The memory of how excited she was at her graduation is completely turned to anger when she realizes that she has been unemployed for twice as long as it took her to complete her qualification. For the hard truth, Mr. President, is that when Tinswalo listened to the President on Thursday, it did not make her grateful, as he may have hoped. It made her sad and it made her angry. Because whether you like it or not, Mr. President, you have betrayed Tinswalo's South African dream. Hearing the President speak without acknowledging that the same people who once gave her the permission to dream are the same people who have now shattered those dreams. And this has only made Tinswalo more resolute than ever that the time for change has come. She knows that the only reason she had a better start in life than her parents did was because her parents stood up and fought for change when it was required. The South African dream she tasted as a child did not come about by accident. Because dreams only come true when we fight to make them true. Tinswalo now knows that it is her turn to fight for change by removing the ANC from power. To rescue SONA from the nightmare that the ANC is condemning her to grow up in. And it's not only Tinswalo. In Eldorado Park, Auntie Fatima is ready to fight to rescue her South African dream so that her children may be free from gangsters and drug lords. In Citrusdal, Farmer Johan is ready to fight to rescue his South African dream so that he can spare his children from the indignity of watching the fruits of their labor rot at the dockside of a failing port. In London, Sipho, the engineer, is ready to fight to rescue his South African dream so that his children can grow up in a country he had to leave in order to find opportunity, but which he still loves deeply. Watching the President stand at this podium and sing the praises of a country that no longer exists, made all South Africans even more resolute than ever before that this is the year we must remove the ANC from power. When the ANC says that 2024 is the year that we must defend our freedom, they are right. We must defend our freedom. We must defend it from the ANC. Because the people of South Africa know that in 2024, the single biggest threat to our freedom and to the South African dream is the African National Congress. A labour market where 7 out of 10 young people cannot find work is an existential threat to our freedom. Load shedding and water shedding are existential threats to our freedom. Rampant crime is an existential threat to our freedom. Childhood malnutrition is an existential threat to our freedom. Corruption and state capture that literally steals food from the mouths of the poor is an existential threat to our freedom. A president who protects and shields his deputy president despite Zuma-level allegations is an existential threat to our freedom. So know this, every time the lights go out, every time the taps run dry, every time criminals attack us in our homes, every time a small business shuts down, every time a child dies of hunger, it reminds us all of the dream that we have lost. But I have news for the President and his party. The people of South Africa are determined to take our dream back. And this year, the people of South Africa will rescue the South African dream by using the most powerful weapon that they have, and that is their vote. Mr. President, you recently made a baseless and dangerous claim that mysterious foreign agents were wanting to bring about regime change in South Africa. Let me give you this assurance. What is coming your way in this election is not regime change by foreign actors. It is democratic change by the people of South Africa. Voting out a failing government is not a threat to democracy. Voting out a failing government is the greatest vindication of democracy. And it is the only way we can all rescue our South African dream. In 1994, the dream that we all believed in was that the lives of this generation would be better than our parents. But in 2024, the nightmare that confronts us is that the lives of our children could be far, far worse than our own. And I don't say that abstractly. I too am a father of 3 young daughters, and I too have great dreams for them. But like Tinswalo and millions of other citizens, I too am fearful about the future of my children, of your children, of our children in this country. And that is why South African people all across the country must now rise to the call of history in this election. No matter how old you are, over the past 30 years, we have all grown up as democracy's children. We have learned, sometimes painfully, that in democracy, it only really works when we use our votes to hold those in power accountable. In 2024, the people of South Africa will vote against those who've diverted South Africa from the promise of 1994 through their corruption, their greed, and their incompetence. And they will vote for those who can practically restore South Africa to this path of promise through a proven track record of delivery, of good governance, and an ability to fix what the ANC has broken. Last week, I announced the DA's blueprint to rescue South Africa. Within the first 100 days, as the anchor tenant of a new multi-party government, we will introduce the most comprehensive legislative reform agenda seen in a generation. We will rescue South Africa through concrete reforms and legislation, not hollow talk and empty promises, reform and legislation. And these reforms and legal challenges and legal changes will introduce within the first 100 days and will aim at the 5 following key priority areas. 1, fixing the institution of Parliament so we can restore it as an engine room of reform. Secondly, ending load shedding for all South Africans by embracing privatization in the private sector. 3, abolishing cadre deployment in favor of merit-based appointments and a capable state. 4, halving the rates of violent crime, including murder, attempted murder, and gender-based violence. And 5thly, growing the economy while creating jobs and protecting social grants. If you had any doubt that the DA was the party to defeat the ANC, you only need to look at the ruling of the Constitutional Court yesterday, which now compels the ANC to hand over the complete records of the Cadre Deployment Committee, dating back all the way to January 2013, when Mr. Ramaphosa became its chairman under Mr. Zuma. Now, the DA expects the ANC and its newfound love for the rule of law to abide by this ruling, to expose its dirty cadre secrets, and how Mr. Ramaphosa's committee laid the foundation for state capture and collapse that we have witnessed across the country. And let me be clear, if they try and subvert the rule of law, we will make sure that they are jailed for contempt of court in exactly the same way that Mr. Zuma was. So, mark your calendars. In just 4 days' time, we will find this president's fingerprints all over cadre deployment and state capture, the very thing he has spent the last 6 years telling us that he was against. My fellow South Africans, Tinswalo, Fatima, Johan, and Sipho all voted for different political parties over the years. All of them, just like us, had different lived experiences. But what we are all united on, here and now, is that things cannot go on the way that they are. And what we all agree is the urgent need to rescue South Africa, and it's the South African dream before it's too late. That is why, in 2024, for the very first time, Tinswalo, Fatima, Johan, and Sipho will vote for the same party, for the one party that has a proven track record of getting things done and a proven ability to rescue South Africa and restore the dream that they all share, and that party is the Democratic Alliance. They will not do so because they believe and share everything. They will do so because they agree about one thing. And that one thing is that without jobs, without electricity, without running water, without an end to cadre deployment, without an honest government that serves the people and not the politicians, without functioning schools and working hospitals, all of our children will be doomed to lives far worse than our own. For we are South Africans, and as South Africans, we are all in this together. So let's be honest with each other. This election is not about restoring the dream of 1994. It's about keeping the dream alive. And when you come down to it, there's only one real choice in this election. Either our great South African dream dies if the ANC comes back to power with radical coalition partners like the EFF and other destructive populists, or we rescue the South African dream through a new multi-party government with the DA at its heart. The truth that there's only one way to rescue Tinswalo's dream. There's only one way to rescue our South African dream, and that is by drawing our crosses next to the DA. In this election, don't vote out of fear. In this election, if you want to rescue our South African dream, vote for the DA. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, I now invite the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Order, honorable members. May I just make an appeal before the Honorable Minister speaks? Honorable members, and honorable members, please, man, let's allow the speakers to address us and let's not drown them. Allow them to be audible. From where we are, it's difficult for us to hear when you are loud. I mean, there's no reason for you not to heckle, but you can do it in a very organized and decent manner. For now, honorable members are very loud. Honorable members are very loud. Thank you very much, honorable members. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Nosviwe Mapisa Ngakula, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Amos Masondo, His Excellency, the President of the Republic, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, honorable members. One thing that is important is that there are two sources of knowledge, is experience and studying a subject. Now, if you don't do both, anything you say is an imagination. I can assure you that you don't study, you don't experience, you don't know what you're talking about. Now, let me start by reminding beneficiaries of apartheid, denialists and apologists on what we've been dealing with over the past 30 years. Following the work of the architect, Dr. Malan, when consolidating apartheid government, apartheid's master artisan, Hendrik Verwoerd, said, "We are building a system with deep roots that no future government will ever undo." Many people who criticize our government, including some in this parliament, argue that we must have done everything within 30 years, never refer to atrocities of apartheid government. They conveniently forget that this country was colonized for 342 years, of which 46 were under apartheid. That is what we are swimming against, and we must continue swimming against that reality. It's a reality we must swim against, and throughout this period, the bastion of apartheid was the mining sector, which was the roughest in terms of implementing apartheid policies. I experienced it. I couldn't put my hand on a blasting certificate because it was reserved for a scheduled person, which was a term to tell a white person. Since South Africa attained democracy in 1994, the government efforts were aimed at achieving a dream of transformation, with a particular focus on ownership, on management, and procurement. Hence, we enacted the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act in 2002 and introduced the Mining Charter in 2004. During the State of the Nation address, the President reported on the work done to transform the economic sectors, more so the mining sector. Unfortunately, some members of this House cannot see progress, even if it hits them in the face. They can't see it, it hits them in the face, they can't feel it, they can't see it. Now, when we did the research 2 years ago, which is the function of studying, we discovered that at the 9 major mining companies that were studied, each one of them didn't have less than 50% of management structure being black. That is research information, it's not thumb-sucking. Two, we did see that in procurement initiative created a lot of business people who are not necessarily seen as part of the mining sector, but have developed on the back of mining. Some ultra-reptarians in and outside the house questioned the figure black ownership in mining sector as quantified by the president, with one of them suggesting that it is less than 10%. It would help for people to do research of these things before they express their opinion. One, if they spent time and studied the industry, they would have known that if you talk coal, only one major company is white. The majority of them are black. Even if you take Siriti, you take Tungela, you take Exaro, the list goes on and on. All of them will not be under 30%, will not be under 10%. They would know that in the manganese sector, if you talk of the African rainbow mineral, Kalahad Manganese, Tsimbintle Holdings, and many others, black ownership in mining companies is a long list. I can break it down and even go to gold, where ARM is dominant, where Harmony is dominant, and the main shareholder is ARM. In the PGMs, Nkwe Platinum, Ivanhoe, Palabura Mining Company have considerable black ownership representation. So, when you quantify numbers, you don't do thumb-sucking that says less than 10% without doing quality assessment of what is available there. Now, if you look at all these companies, you can see that there is practical progress being made. If one adds this and say it is less than 10%, I cannot even talk of their mathematics. I can only talk of their arithmetic being flawed. Now, cognizant of the fact that mines are born out of exploration, we have just launched an exploration fund. It's never late to do the right thing, unless you are a beneficiary of other things earlier. If you have never been a beneficiary, it's never late. We'll continue doing the right thing because the future is ahead of us. We can inherit the past, but we must build the future. And if you don't know what it is to be under apartheid, you are a beneficiary. You will never know the beauty of future. You will only imagine the beauty of the past. Now, it is therefore important that we invest in exploration so that the future of this very important sector continues to be bright. We firmly believe that South Africa holds significant quantity of minerals needed for the transition from high carbon emission to low carbon emission, which informs the view of our mining industry is a sunrise industry. We have got the critical minerals, they are in this country. We must discover them and we must exploit them. Having appointed a service provider for design, implementation and maintenance of mining license and cadastral system, we are optimistic that the system will soon help us accelerate the processing and prospecting of the mining industry. Let me, because of the pressure of time, go to the contribution of mining for the future of the energy sector. You know, it's very good, President, that you wrote a speech for Mr. Steenhuisen. He didn't have to write a speech, you wrote it for him. He only talked about Dintswalo. Now, despite the obstacles of apartheid government-guided constitution, this government continues to strive for a national democratic society in which people enjoy equal rights and equal access to basic services. Like Dintswalo, which you wrote a speech for Mr. Steenhuisen about, have access to electricity today. Since 2019, we have successfully connected 776 households of electricity, taking us to over 92% of South Africans having access to electricity. Now, if you never have access to electricity, you will shout load shedding. You will even forget that in your own house, when there is a box and you load it with a number of electrical appliances, it trips. When you take access to electricity from 34 to 92, you are loading that infrastructure. And you must appreciate it and work on the load shedding. Now, as part of the concerted effort of secure, reliable energy supply, government introduced independent power producers procurement program. Since the launch in 2011, the DMRE has, through the IPP office, procured a total of 13,266.9 megawatts. It has procured that from 140 IPPs whose technology are based on renewables, diesel and battery storage. Of this capacity, 7,362.2 megawatts was from 95 IPPs who are currently connected to the grid and supplying the much needed electricity. But it puts to our discussion whether you can do renewables without base load. A combination of the two is what we require to deal with the challenges facing us. But there's ill-informed pressure put by the DA that go for renewables, switch off coal, go to renewables, is actually ill-informed because it says destroy base load, go to renewables. Intermittent behavior of this is not taken into account because it is fashionable and nice to do so. Now, the remaining 145 IPPs, a combined capacity of 5,942 megawatts, are either in construction or preparing to reach commercial close, and therefore, under the administration, 5,939 megawatts from 46 IPPs were procured, resulting in a number of them being on the grid or a various stage of development. Let me go to NERSA has concurred with the Minister of Electricity, Mr. Ramokgopa, that 2,500 nuclear capacity has to be connected. It is gazetted. It is on the stage of being launched. It is Maylam, who is a shadow energy minister, who can be a disaster if he can be a minister. Now, it's a problem. So the reality of the matter is that is where we are. We are going to be undoing apartheid system against the drive by many in the opposition. In concluding, let me refer a little bit, Honorable President, to what they celebrate, called cadre deployment, whatever. What it has done, it has changed a situation where every DG was a white male in 1994. It has changed the reality where every judge was a white male, where every mayor was a white male. The cadre development has changed that reality. So, run to court, do everything, but the reality of the matter is, we will do it. You will get your report, but we'll continue deploying people who are capable. That's it. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I thank you. Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable, a member of the EFF, Honorable, there is no name? Okay. I now invite the member, Honorable Shabisa. Honorable Shabisa.
the Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Your Excellency, the President, and honorable members. As I speak in this debate, I feel the absence of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the founder of the IFP and South Africa's trusted voice of reason. For 29 years, Prince Buthelezi spoke in this debate, giving us the real state of the nation. In honor of his leadership, let me echo his final warning to the ANC. He quoted from the very first State of the Nation address to a democratic South Africa when Madiba said, open quote, "The government I have the honor to lead is inspired by the single vision of creating a people-centered society free from want, hunger, deprivation, ignorance, suppression, and fear," close quote. 3 decades later, that vision has disappeared. As Prince Buthelezi told us, if the promise of South Africa is truly still alive, it is thanks to the resilience of our people. But how far is this government willing to test our resilience? They are playing with a dangerous game. I am afraid, Honorable President, that 1 year after this sober warning, our people's resilience is gone. Every day in every corner of our country, our people live with instinctive understanding that what is being done by the government of the day is wrong. We are left with this feeling which we once had before. My generation grew up with a government that showed nothing but contempt for the struggling people of South Africa. We entered democracy full of hope for change. And in these first years of a government for the people, of the people, by the people, we were finally going in the right direction. As a government of national unity, tore down every discriminatory law and replaced it with what is good and fair and just, we believe that South Africa will continue moving from strength to strength. We witnessed how Prince Buthelezi, as the Minister of Home Affairs, tabled landmark legislation that is widely considered the highest watermark of migration policy and law. We saw South Africa's doors being opened to skills and investment, a balance being struck between human rights and national security, and our interests being aligned with our values and international obligation. Under the IFP Minister of Correctional Services, our prisoners became more than centers of punishment on the principle that rehabilitation for safe reintegration into society is essential to stop the revolving door of crime. Under an IFP Minister of Arts and Culture, Science and Technology, the National Arts Council was birthed, and the Pan-South African Language Board, I'm talking about South Africa, during the Government of National Unity, the South African Heritage Resources Agency, and the National Heritage Council. Technical colleges were supported to increase innovation among SMMEs, and Women in Science program recruited young women to career path in science and technology. Between 1994 and 1999, when our country was led by the Government of National Unity and KwaZulu-Natal was governed outright by the IFP, our country flourished. Reviewing the first 10 years of democracy, this is what the IMF said, and I quote, South Africa has made impressive gains in stabilizing the economy and laying a firm foundation for higher economic growth and broad-based improvement in living standard. The public finances have been strengthened significantly. Interest rates have been lowered, and inflation has been brought firmly under control. The rate of the economic growth has more than doubled on average since the end of apartheid. Close quote. Honorable President, this is the South Africa you would have us remember, but that South Africa no longer exists. 20 years into democracy, after the ANC had enjoyed unfettered power for 10 years, the IMF review was far less glowing. They said, I quote, "Living standards have improved substantially in the first 20 years of democracy, but in recent years, the economy has underperformed peers. The outlook is lackluster with low growth, high unemployment, and elevated twin deficit." Close quote. 30 years into democracy, the IMF could only shake its head and say, open quote, "The country has faced rolling blackouts after years of mismanagement. The elevated public debt level, one of the highest amongst emerging markets, limits the government's ability to meet growing social and development needs. Persistently high food and energy prices have pushed up inflation. Stabilizing the country's debt will require reducing the government wage bill and transfer to state-owned enterprise." Close quote. Honorable President, listen to this one closely, because that is where the lie is exposed. You cannot point to 1994 as a measure of how far we have come under the ANC government, because the ANC did not govern this country alone in between 1994 and 2024. The strong and stable democracy that was built from 1994 to 1999 was built by the Government of National Unity, a government in which the IFP served from 1999 to 2004. As the good work continued, the IFP remained in cabinet. It was only when the ANC gained unfettered power that government began to falter. Let us look at the facts. After years of negative growth, in 1994, South Africa's GDP began growing at a steady pace under the Government of National Unity. But when the ANC took over, the President laments that the global financial crisis brought an end to a decade of strong growth. What he doesn't mention is that the decade after the global financial crisis and even before COVID, our country was still stagnant at a growth rate of just 0.26%. Over the last 8 years, foreign investors have dumped South African stocks to the tune of 900 billion rand. What about unemployment? Under the Government of National Unity, the unemployment rate decreased year upon year, every single year. Indeed, for 10 years, while the IFP held seats in cabinet, unemployment consistently decreased. But over the next 20 years, the ANC family in power, unemployment leaped up to staggering 15%. When it comes to crime, for the first 10 years of democracy, the crime rate decreased annually for 8 years out of 10 years. By 1999, after 5 years of national government unity, crime had decreased by 11%. Then the ANC took over, and by 2021, crime had increased by 23%. The ANC is moving in the wrong direction. Stop looking for the pen to sign the NHI bill into law. On record, the IFP supports universal access, health access, but the NHI bill as it stands is a recipe for disaster. The last SONA of the sixth administration was not about South Africa we live in. South Africa is in crisis. Our country is in the autopilot mode, as President Mbeki confirmed. Tinswalo's story is not the story of today's youth. Unlike Tinswalo, 41% of our youth is unemployed. Thousands of NSFAS beneficiaries are still sitting at home with their degrees and diplomas with no jobs. Doctors were protesting just yesterday. Their dreams are fading away. Millions of our children of democracy still live in shacks and informal settlement with no clean water, toilets, or refuse removal. Their only connection with Tinswalo is that she too sits vulnerable in the dark on stage 6 load shedding. The ANC's failures are unforgivable. Consider what was achieved in just 10 years under the IFP premiers in KwaZulu-Natal. Under the IFP premier, antiretrovirals were rolled out for free of charge for the first time, turning the tide on the HIV/AIDS pandemic. The IFP set the trend for the whole country, enabling the Constitutional Court to instruct an ANC government to do in South Africa what the IFP was doing in KwaZulu-Natal. That is how the IFP serves the vulnerable. By contrast, in January 2023, the ANC fed millions of learners with rotting food because of corruption in school nutrition program, and they failed to distribute 48,000 blankets despite procuring them fraudulently for 22 million. That is how ANC treats vulnerable. Under an IFP government, Itala Bank provided loans to emerging farmers and entrepreneurs, funding countless small businesses. But under ANC, Itala Bank is closing. So, Honorable President, do not keep telling us of what the ANC has done since 1994. Again, the ANC did not liberate South Africa nor build it alone. It was a number of political parties involved. The ANC and the ANC alone gave us state capture. They gave us load shedding stage 6. The ANC gave us 9 wasted years. The ANC gave us close to 8 million unemployed people of South Africa. Let us not pull wool over our people's eyes and pretend that the ANC is the only party that can protect South Africa and do what is best for her. The ANC only serve ANC. How many MPs and ministers implicated in the state capture have been taken to task? How many? Honorable President, you have put party before country. The damage done to South Africa is huge. Another 5 years under the ruling party is hard to contemplate. The IFP stands ready to be an alternative government to save South Africa. Honorable President, you must be ready for the change of government. Honorable President, my generation did not get any solution in the SONA you delivered. As a result, unlike Tinswalo, the people of South Africa and our youth are disillusioned by the ANC for they have lived through the destruction of our country at the hands of the ANC government. Therefore, 2024 is our 1994. We will do what we did in 1994.
Order.
We will remove the government that has failed our people.
Order, Honorable Member, your time is up.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Member. I now invite the Honorable Deputy Chair of the National Council of Provinces.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the President and the Deputy President of the Republic, House Chairpersons, whips of the whip of the majority party, and whips of other political parties. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, Ben Okri once said, and I quote, "The most authentic thing about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering." Close quote. This debate takes place when South Africa celebrates a poignant moment in history as we reach the 30-year milestone of the country's constitutional democracy. Parliament's strategic objective has been to create a non-racial, non-sexist and democratic society. And our primary mission has been centered on mobilizing all classes and strata that objectively stand to gain from the success of the cause for social and economic change. In this context, Parliament gives expression to its mandate as informed by the precepts of transformative constitutionalism, which the former Chief Justice of South Africa aptly asserts as being an enabling instrument to give expression to the country's transformation agenda. In his paper titled Transformative Constitutionalism, Justice Langa further makes reference to the post-amble of the interim constitution, which he asserts also expresses the pinnacle objective of South Africa's constitution, where he asserts that the underlying imperative of our constitution is to provide, and I quote, "a historic bridge between the past of a deeply divided society, characterized by strife, conflict, untold suffering and injustice, and a future founded on the recognition of human rights, democracy, a peaceful coexistence and development opportunities for all South Africans, irrespective of color, race, class, belief or sex," close quote. Honorable President, in fact, when I stand here, ek dink nou maar net, ons moet nie hier naartoe kom omdat ons wil verkiesing kom baklei nie. Ons moet hier naartoe kom omdat ons die mandaat van die mense uitvoer. En die mandaat van die mense is om seker te maak, Parliament hou die executive accountable. En soos ons dink, as we reflect on this 30-year milestone of our constitutional democracy, we must bear in mind what we have inherited. We inherited a system that had inflicted far-reaching damage and oppression to millions of South Africans on the basis of race. We must therefore observe this 30-year milestone in the context of the progress made as a result of our rights-based agenda, which has been put in motion by our constitutional democracy under the ANC. These rights collectively represent our departure from a painful, oppressive, and discriminatory past, as we lean in towards creating a new South Africa from the ruinous past of colonialism and apartheid. During this first 30 years of our democracy, Parliament had to deal with laws that oppressed our fairness and equality. We have repealed that oppressive and discriminatory apartheid laws and enacted laws to overhaul the functioning of the broader state machinery. These actions have helped to solidify our democracy and assisted us to make great strides towards realizing our country's democratic goals. Furthermore, the efficacy of parliamentary business, particularly through the committees and debates in applying procedural processes and protocols, particularly as outlined in the Constitution and in the rules of both houses, have significantly improved throughout the years. Though through plenary discussions, questions, motions, and resolutions, members of Parliament continue to actively and robustly participate in policy debates while unpacking matters of material importance of the nation. Our improved coordination with the executive has also ensured the attendance of ministers in the sitting of both houses when required, leading to increase in executive responses to questions for oral and written reply. Agbare lede, tydens COVID-19 het Parlement bewys dat ons deur die gebruik van tegnologie tot 'n groot mate kon beantwoord aan die uitdaging wat dit gebied het aan ons werk. 2 weke gelede, tydens ons wetgewende summit, noem professor Soma Fikeni iets baie belangrik. Sê die wat mense observe van Parlement is dat elke party staan op die platform vir sy eie party. Ons werk nie vir 'n gesamentlike Suid-Afrikaanse identiteit nie. Die enigste tyd wat ons vir onsself identifiseer as Suid-Afrikaners is wanneer die Springbokke die wêreldbeker wen. Wanneer Bafana goed doen in die AFCON. Wanneer ons atlete goed doen in die Olimpiese spele. Dit is die tyd wat ons onsself identifiseer as Suid-Afrikaners. Daar is foute volgens ons almal. En die ANC as 'n regerende party is die eerste een om die foute en die tekortkominge te erken. En dit moet ons sê, ons staan hier en regverdig onsself vir dinge wat in die verlede gebeur het nie. Ons staan ook hier en regverdig onsself. Ons sal ook nie onsself verdedig as ons 'n visie het vir die toekoms om 'n beter lewe vir alle Suid-Afrikaners aan te bied. Suid-Afrikaners het die reg op hulle eie werklikheid. En as iemand hier staan en die president wil antwoord op sy storie van Tintswalo, dan moet jy hem antwoord op die werklikheid van Tintswalo. Want elke mens ervaar sy eie werklikheid. En Daniel se werklikheid is die John se werklikheid. Daarom kan jy nie iemand anders se werklikheid ontken. As iemand vir jou sê, ek het onder 'n boom gebly. Ek het onder 'n boom gebly. Ek het nou 'n erf met water en toegang tot elektrisiteit. Ek het in 'n sinkhuis gewoon. Ek het nou toegang tot 'n RDP-huis. Load shedding is nie die einde van die aarde nie. En ek, president, is een van die mense wat voel, sodra jy van load shedding praat, dan begin hulle om jou te saboteer. Ons sal moet iets doen aan die sabotasie. Ons sal moet iets doen aan die sabotasie. Antwoorde nie. Met Afrikaners